Hello, and welcome to the Six Figure Developer Podcast, the podcast where we talk about new and exciting technologies, professional development, clean code, career advancement, and more. I'm John Calloway.
And I'm Clayton Hunt. With us today is Auri Rahimzadeh. Auri is an accomplished technophile, writer, and author. Having taught side by side with Steve Wozniak, co founder of Apple, Auri continues to share a passion for technology, education for children and teens. He is owner of Auri's Ideas in Fishers, Indiana, and an instructor at 1150 Academy, a non for profit technology education boot camp. Welcome, Auri.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, why don't you tell us kind of how you got into the tech field and how you got to where you are today?
Look, gosh. So back when I was a kid, I was the one that always tried sneaking off to play around with the computers. So this was back in the 80s when Apple had that initiative that got you access to Apple computer, like Apple IIs in the classroom.
Mhm.
And the first thing I ever got to play with was Logo. And I remember it in art class. So this is what, second grade maybe. So this is like 1982, 83. Wow, that was a long time ago. Um, and I remember they brought Logo up. And it was really cool. They said, okay, here's this triangle in the middle of the screen. Make it go do something. And you could say, forward 20, right 90, forward 20, right 90. And if you did that 4 times, you got a square. And then if you read so back then there in the magazines, there was software, there's programming in like National Geographic World magazine, in the back of math books. There were programs that you could write, that you could type into your computer. Byte magazine existed, which, by the way, I have every single issue ever printed.
Nice.
Yep. Like Insider A plus, what Computer World, like Macworld, etc. Um, and remember Computer Shopper, right? So, but a lot of these magazines had programs that you could just, you know, type into your computer. So I would play around with those at school. I loved it. It was amazing. My dad had like an Apple IIe in his office, and eventually I got a Laser 128. But getting back to Logo, like the coolest part of Logo is that forward 20, right 90 was so simple that you could see it on the screen. When you wrote a command, the computer did what you told it to. And then it would say, okay, yeah, but you could take this one step further. You could say, repeat 4 times, forward 20, right 90. I was like, oh, yeah, because a square is the same command 4 times. And I was like, oh, well, what a great way of explaining a loop to a kid.
Mhm.
And then I learned you could say, well, I'm creating a square. So you could say to square, forward 20, right 90, repeat 4, forward 20, right 90. And now I have just built my own command, square, and it would create a square. And then, you could like say, repeat, 10, I don't remember what the math of it is, right? And, say square, right 10, or right 15, and boom, now I have a flower, and what a way for a kid to start thinking about procedural programming, or just understanding how things work, and breaking a problem down. So that really led to my really being interested in computers. And then I learned basic, because basic was in everything. And I got into high school, and they started teaching like Pascal. So I ended up getting like computers, like I got a Laser 128. Anybody remember those? And then I stuck a screwdriver in it to blow it so that my dad would buy me an Apple II GS. And I never told him to this day. But I kept trying to actually like make the machine die so that I could get a better computer, because he wouldn't get me one. So I ended up having to work for it, and I saved like $2,000 to buy an Apple II GS, which was like $2,500. And he's like, "Well, you should just buy a Mac." And I go, "No, because the Apple II was better. Like the Apple II had programming built in. Like you just press Control Reset, and boom, you were at a basic prompt, and you could call -151, and it would bring you into the monitor, and you could type 3D0G, because Steve's a fan of Three Dog Night, Yeah. What a cool thing built into the monitor on the Apple II that, you had a whole just society, like a community of hobbyists. And that as a kid, that really drew me in. Like I found out if you found people who were like you, who liked computers, who liked programming, you would want to work with them and be like them. And I was like, I don't understand how you guys write something that does word wrap. Like today, I wouldn't even question it. But as a kid, like the concept of that made no sense to me. Like these guys were just like, wizards that can make anything happen. But I didn't want to be a programmer. And the reason for this is I got older, I didn't want to be a programmer, even though I really liked it and I was doing really well at it. It was because all the movies back then made, oh, there comes my dog. They were all like really overweight in a dark room eating pizza all day. And I'm like, I want to live past 30.
Oh, no, see, that was my life goal, is to be bald, overweight, and eat pizza all day. I got 2 out of 3.
I was like, oh my gosh, but I ended up getting into it anyway. So this is the thing, like it ended up turning out, the programming was a lot of fun, but just simply the community was probably the best part of software engineering. Solving problems was fun. And the coolest part about programming, once you met these people, was every time you built something, it was something new that didn't exist. It was exciting, like figuring that out. And so, so I started a magazine on disk, quote unquote, and I would upload it to CompuServe and Genie, and it was called PowerGS Discazine. And I would interview people who knew all these things and talk. This is all well before podcasts, right? And they would write articles, and I would write articles, and I wrote the whole thing myself, which as a kid was really fun. And that led to my interviewing Steve Wozniak, and it was really weird because we tried having the interview for like 6 months, and we were like chasing each other. And I finally got on a schedule. I flew all the way out to California to meet up with him. And when I get to his office, keep in mind, I'm like 18, or 19. I'm like, oh yeah, Dad flew me out here, boop. No, I'll stay at my grandmother's, who lives in Mountain View. This is all before Google. And I get into Steve's office, and he's like, I gotta go. And then I'm like, wait, hold on a sec. Then we proceeded to talk for like, a couple hours. And I left out the cool part is when he agreed to do the interview, I called into his office. I got an email that said, hey, Steve Wozniak would be happy to do an interview with you. Just call this number. And so I did, 408-354-5000. And this guy answers the phone. I'm like, oh, hi, I'm Auri Rahimzadeh with PowerGS Discazine. I was told I could talk with Steve Wozniak. It's like, oh, hi, this is Steve. And I was like, oh, cool, and we ended up talking for a while. So anyway, one thing led to another. We had the interview, which was fine, did the Discazine. Steve calls me up and goes, hey, because we both shared a passion for teaching kids. Like as a high schooler, I was in college at the time, but even in high school, I liked working with kids and helping them learn more about computers. So I would go talk at different schools and do this sort of thing. So we found we had the similar passion. He goes, you should come out and teach with me, and just come out for the summer and teach. And I was like, oh, very cool. And it wasn't about programming. It was just, teach these kids HTML, JavaScript really wasn't a thing at the time, and so forth. And sure enough, for an entire summer, all I did was teach kids programming, play pranks, and go to concerts. And I was like, okay, I want to do this for the rest of my life. This is so cool because I got to meet more programmers. Like I got to meet, Andy Rubin, just various guys from, like the QuickTime team and Apple engineering, etc. And they were all just like, engineers are so welcoming. Not all. I mean, sometimes, right, engineers can, because we're all smart, right? So we can be judgmental, putting it lightly. And sometimes we have a good brain mouth filter, and sometimes we don't. Um, but I found the majority of my experiences with smart developers was that if they were willing to mentor you, they tended to be awesome, and they would encourage you to be in this in that community. They would invite you in, and that's what I've always talked. When I teach, when I mentor, I'm like, you should go mentor somebody else, and that will help you take care of yourself. That because it's a powerful thing to mentor people, kind of like rubber ducking on acid. Um, yeah, of course, my dog's gonna go and drink water the whole time I'm doing this. Yeah, good thing I filled that thing all the way up. So she's cool though. So anyway, that led to my getting another job as a technology analyst, because I still didn't think I should go be a programmer. It was getting more fun, and programming was cool, but it was a hobby. It wasn't a career. And I thought, maybe I'll be an IT guy. And then I found out that tends to be like a thankless job. Like,
Yeah.
IT, you do a lot of repetitive work, solve a lot of people's problems, and it's really hard to be human for 8 whole hours as an IT person. And then I found out while I was doing this analyst work in the consumer electronics side of things, because I got to be part of this was a connection through Steve. I got to be friends with my good friend Richard Doherty. And while I was working for him, while sitting on a beach in Clearwater, Florida, I learned VB6.
Nice.
Yeah. And I learned that you could write code, and the machine wouldn't be terrible for doing it. So up until this point, I had been working on my Apple IIs, which it wasn't fun writing code on Apple II. Like Hyper Studio GS was really cool with its simple script language.
Yeah, hypercards and things like that.
Well, there was HyperCard, which was different, but
Okay.
Hyper Studio was from Roger Wagner Publishing. And on the GS, it had SimpleScript, which I loved the language. It was buggy, but it was really easy to write stuff, and it was really easy to understand. And you learned how to like space your code out properly. And it was a very great programming language for a teenager. And then they came out with HyperCard for the Mac. Or not HyperCard, Hyper Studio for the Mac. HyperCard had been out forever for the Mac. And that used I don't think I think it was called, like, it wasn't HyperScript. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was Lisp based. So rather than SimpleScript, which was very human, it was Lisp based. And so the way I taught myself how to program that was, hey, I'm going to go take that old Apple II game, Lemonade Stand, and I'm going to write it for the Mac. And so you learned about Lisp. So the weird thing about all this, which I guess I could have structured this better, is as a kid all the way through being in my my early 20s, like 21, 22, I just got hit with every programming language there was. It was like, it was a means to an end. A programming language was just a way of expressing the logic I needed to solve my problem. And all these guys that, and women that I worked with, but it was mostly men, during the 80s, you just didn't see it so much. And 90s. All these people, their job was solving problems. They weren't like a Microsoft developer or a C developer or an Apple developer. They're developers. They're programmers to me. And what they did is they found a problem and they solved it. And the language was a means to an end. And you could do it the right way and you could do it the wrong way. So I think that helped, like not being pigeonholed into a single language. Um, these days, it's kind of like anything that has competition. Uh, the weaker ones go to the wayside, even if they have merit. And we kind of have, like the big three or four, right? On the big side, you still have C, but that's like a different kind of person, right? C++. But then you got Java, you've got JavaScript, you've got .NET, but really C sharp, and and those are the big three. And then you've got at least on the object oriented side, and then you have like the ones that people still use all the time. What Perl, right? Python. Python's so like been growing again. Who expected that? But then JavaScript is going shoom, all the way up. For a beginner's programming language that was almost a joke, it turned into this huge behemoth. Partially because of the people like the ones that attracted me to programming. It was the community. Yeah. Like we have a problem we need to solve. We'll make JavaScript do it. And what an awesome way, like that's going to inspire people to be part of the community, to contribute.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. Yeah.
And I saw that you were recently giving presentations around .NET MAUI. So
Yeah.
I thought maybe we could talk about what is .NET MAUI and what do we have to look forward to on that front?
Yeah. So on the note of all the different programming languages out there and kind of being pigeonholed into something, Microsoft's done a really good job of finally bringing the mess that is Microsoft development into something clean. Like if you look at the background of Microsoft development, I mean, just on the UI side of things, what you had WinForms, XAML standard, Silverlight, what UWP, you had things built in C, etc. A whole bunch, right? And then just on the programming side, you had, oh my gosh, like, and I've done this presentation a few times, and people give me the list of the like the programming languages. So just go through it: C, Visual Basic, COM, VBA, .NET Compact Framework, .NET COM with .NET Interop, Mono and Xamarin, PCL, Mono and Xamarin and PCL, .NET and PCL, .NET Core, .NET Standard, .NET Framework plus .NET Standard. You can kind of see it's been nuts, right? And it's just, like if you're used to change, then yay, the Microsoft ecosystem. But I love that they've put the brakes on that and said, wait, this is crazy. And we want .NET to be a first-class framework and platform. How do we do that? Well, we got to stop this madness of having our developers switch gears every few years, and we have something else that ends with X. So how do we solve that? And that's where .NET Core, .NET Standard came in, and it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to embrace open source. We're going to embrace the community. The thing that made me feel powerful and accepted and willing to contribute and grow, my friends in my network, they embrace that. So instead of the old days, right, it's open Microsoft. And that has borne a lot of fruit, because now when you think Microsoft, I mean, at least if you're in that system, you could target pretty much any platform. You don't have to do all your development on Windows. You can do it on your Mac. You can do it in Linux. You could deploy to anything, and you don't really have to think about it so much. It's like, oh yeah, it's just .NET.
And that's true. I made a similar comment to Richard Campbell a while ago about .NET Core is now mostly on parity with .NET Framework, and he said, yes, that's true for web development. We still don't have a good story for native application development on Mac and Linux and that type of thing. So are we looking for a more unified UI UX experience coming to those platforms?
Yeah, and that's where .NET MAUI comes in. One thing the .NET Core and Framework, just to add to that, my diatribe about that is, like I said, they put the brakes on it, and on the development side, you can now stick with .NET Core and .NET Standard and be safe, or at least feel safe, and that covers the language side of it. Well, what about the UI side? Because you still have all that other crap, right? You got WinUI, WinForms, XAML standard, XAML, Silverlight, which even though it's dead, stuff still exists. Plus any number of other things that are out there that are from Microsoft. So MAUI, my understanding is that the goal is to bring that into the .NET platform in a standardized way. So it becomes system.ui something. And that's MAUI. And I'm a Xamarin developer. I've lived with Xamarin, since it costs like a couple grand to get your license. And I've gone through Xamarin Forums and I love it. And that team is so crazy dedicated to making a great product. Heck, that app that got acquired, that was written in Xamarin Forums, right when it came out, thought it was the coolest thing ever. I'm like, wow, they should bring this to Windows. Because for the most part, Xamarin was cross-platform development that really didn't have a lot of trade-offs. I mean, yeah, you had to deal with mono, but that's going away as part of MAUI. Yay, Microsoft taking the whole mono approach seriously and saying, oh, okay, we need to get rid of that, and we're going to call it .NET for iOS and .NET for Android. So finally, a first-class .NET runtime for Android and iOS.
Since MAUI is going to be I guess a unified UI,
right?
Are we going to have to, is stuff going to change? Are we going to have to learn this new platform as opposed to Xamarin Forms or HTML or something like that?
No, so that's a great question. So MAUI is based on Xamarin Forms. So if you already know Xamarin Forms, you already have the underpinnings of MAUI. And if you're already a Xamarin developer, you probably know you're not required to build your app in some particular way. If you're a Xamarin developer, you could use MVVM Cross if you want. You can use Xamarin Forms. You could use Prism. You can use the reactive extensions. MAUI's going to take that to the next level. They're going to more loosely couple the model, so it's not everything is something bindable, which is good because that probably has a lot of overhead. I haven't looked at that part of the source, but I imagine that if everything's bindable, you have overhead, and they're going to introduce a few additional items. So you still could do all that stuff that you're already used to. Just the namespace for the most part is going to change, and you're no longer going to have that like Franken project kind of approach where you've got the Android. This is what Microsoft called it, Frankenproj, and I agreed. Like I'd never heard that term, and I was like, "You're right," but at least it's not the shared project. That's the hardest thing to explain to people. So you'll have a single project now. There'll be a MAUI project, a .NET MAUI project, and all the stuff that you're going to override, like your Bluetooth implementation, is under a folder: Android, iOS, Mac OS, Windows, etc. And all your share code, it's all in one project. They also simplified a lot of this so that fonts and images are in a single set of folders, and you don't have to worry about it across each device. Now, keep in mind, this is all crazy canary. So who knows how it's really going to look, right? Because it's not coming out. Yeah, it would only be in like alpha or beta form this year, and it wouldn't be. The best case is next year, next winter. But
that's why I was surprised at the announcement. It seems like Microsoft has had really good track record with announcing experiments through Blazor and Project Tie and things like that, and getting feedback from the community and getting support and getting buy-in and getting people to actually kick the tires and see how they like it. But with .NET MAUI announcement, it was, this will be coming. This is not an experiment. This is coming in .NET 6. So we're still more than a year out from even looking at that. We're going to look at the unification of .NET hopefully this November, correct? And then we can start to see some early releases of .NET MAUI around those times.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading, is that around November, around build, this winter is, or no, .NET Conf, is it .NET Conf this winter? .NET Conf. That's when we're gonna hear, when .NET 5 is released there, you'll see the MAUI bits start coming out. Now, this does bring up, remember I was saying you could have Xamarin Forms, Prism, MVVM, Cross, etc. They're introducing a few new things. So like you said, Blazor mobile bindings is coming. So if you're a React developer, like a React Native developer, think of the power that Xamarin could give you or in this case, MAUI. We're probably going to go back and forth, calling it Xamarin and MAUI. Xamarin will become MAUI, basically. You would get the Blazor mobile bindings. You're going to get mobile view MVU, model view update, which is a really interesting pattern. We're on a podcast, so I can't show you, but it's so fluent in how you build your UI. It's really neat. If you check out the slides I had, or even the Blazor stuff, you'll see. But all of this is part of that one Microsoft approach, that one .NET approach, not one Microsoft, one .NET, saying, okay, look, we need people to start taking .NET seriously. And .NET is no longer just a back-end solution, because if you look at development, if you're a .NET developer, I think you tend to be relegated to being a back-end developer. People think you're going to build an API, you're going to build microservices, you're going to build back-end stuff, and that you need to know someone to do the front end. It's going to be a JavaScript team, React, Node, Angular, etc. And it's kind of the way like Java's gone, right? Like Java's back end, unless you want to write an Android app. But Microsoft's like, wait, we have these great languages and great tooling, be it Visual Studio or VS Code. Visual Studio is like a gold standard IDE, and VS Code is used by practically everyone to build all the other apps that are out there, right? That aren't .NET. So how do you get past that being the back end? And that's where you're starting to see Blazor. We can do front end too. Like all the React Native stuff that you've been, or React stuff, we can do that. Make C# a first-class citizen for the front end. The same thing for scripting. I see all you people are using Python. Why don't you just start using C#? And they were showing examples of that earlier this year at Build, of C# without all the imports and so forth, and using C# like a scripting language. And it was fascinating. That is very cool.
So if the Blazor mobile bindings, which I've seen previews of, they look pretty neat. There's still a learning curve because you got to learn the mobile specific parts, like referencing a control grid or whatever it is that mobile has. If that's going to be part of MAUI, and MAUI is going to enable the same UI language, I guess, for iOS, Android, Linux, Mac, Windows, does that mean that you'll be able to use this model view update and Blazor mobile bindings or mobile Blazor bindings for desktop development as well?
Yeah. So here's what I think, because they haven't announced anything. So MAUI right now looks like it's building mobile applications. And they're still going to support WinUI. I guess that's WinUI 3. My guess, at least I think this would be the smart thing to do, is for Microsoft to say, okay, system.UI, MAUI, which means multi-application UI, we're just going to standardize on MAUI. No more WinUI. We'll still support WinForms. You'll download the NuGet package, you'll get WinForms. Done. I mean, that's how we've been doing it, right? I mean, since NuGet, it kind of changed everything, right? Not DLL hell everywhere. It was, no, yeah, there's a NuGet package. If there's a problem, you update it. Yay. I think that's where desktop development's going to go. So to answer your question, is this going to move from mobile to web and desktop? Then yeah, I think so. I don't know if I think Blazor's still going to own. If that's going to be their approach for web. Blazor, and then if you want to do backend and go the Angular or React route, we 100% support you. We're not opinionated. You're use the right technology for what you need to do. Go for it. And C# can do a great job, and just the .NET itself can do a great job empowering your backend. But if you don't want to do that, that's okay too. We got Azure. We'll make money either way. Yeah, I think that's where it's going to go. Yeah, Clayton. Yeah. I hope they announce that, because that'd be nice to know that there's a future. Like if you already know Xamarin, or UWP. I mean, because if you knew XAML, you could basically build any of this stuff, right?
Right.
Everything else is C#. So Blazor, okay, yeah, we're gonna go. Yeah, okay, we're gonna mix HTML with C#. Remember that? That was ASP.
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, even when Windows 8 came out, they had the Windows or WinJS, which was an attempt to get or to enable web page developers to build Windows applications. Now that never really took off, but that I think is because they were targeting a brand new audience instead of targeting their already core audience. If you said, okay, you people that have been doing Blazor, you can use that same technology and build your Windows application, I think they'd have better luck getting that to stick, especially if it was you can build your Windows application and your Linux application and your Mac application at the same time using the same code. I think they'd have a much better chance of getting that to stick. So I'm kind of hopeful there. I've never really taken the time to learn Xamarin Forms, and me personally, I would feel much better being able to do Blazor and build that iOS or Android application.
And to be fair, the marketing copy that Microsoft provides is not always the best. They're not great about communicating the goals of things. Although the bullet points that they've listed on the GitHub pages for .NET MAUI, it's a multi-platform native UI deployed to multiple devices across mobile. It's the evolution of Xamarin Forms targeting .NET 6. The goals are to improve app performance, improve simplicity of control extensibility, simplicity of contributing, and enable developer options to use Model View Update and Blazor. Mm-hmm. Those are generic enough and maybe enticing enough to give it some thought and give it give it a fair shake to see what the brave new world looks like.
Mm-hmm. I hear you. The good thing is, at least the way I see it, if you're already a Xamarin developer, you're not losing out. It's a slight shift. If anything, it's better. Again, having practically no access to this yet, I don't know. But keep in mind, if you don't like it, you can change it now. I mean, unlike WinJS, when that stuff came out, that's back in like the Steve Sinofsky days, of Microsoft. And I think that's before Satya. Ballmer was still there, and Panos Panay was just getting his sea legs. Because I still have the autographed Surface touch cover upstairs with the original Surface. So now, if you don't like a Microsoft technology, you can change it, which is really different. You really have no excuse not to fix something if you have a problem with it. And they're regular. I mean, what do you have, a new Visual Studio update like every week now? It's like every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. There's some new update, and I've reported bugs, and within a few weeks, they fixed it. They said, "You're right. That's a bug. Thanks for catching it. We'll go fix that." And boom, they fix it. And I'm like, what Microsoft is this?
Yeah, that's I really enjoy the amount of transparency that they have these days, that you can raise issues, you can read the issues that have already been communicated to them, you can read about the progress that they're making. They're doing community stand-ups, and they're doing open architectural discussions to talk about the progress of things, and that and admitting that there are things that we're not going to be able to get to on this point release or this beta release. We are looking to improve it, and fully mean it.
Mm-hmm. Which is great. Having worked on with Apple products for so long, Apple's so close-minded about things,
Yeah.
But whatever. I don't hate Apple. I'm always surprised by how closed it is.
Yeah.
It's like Microsoft of years ago. It's like, oh, okay.
So with that, where can we go to learn more about .NET MAUI and what the future holds for that?
Sure thing. So I'm trying to think of like the best approach would be, I've got a list. Hold on. One, I would go check out the MAUI GitHub page. This is github.com whack.net whack MAUI, MAUI. So pretty easy there. I think you could just say github.net MAUI, .net spelled DOTNET. And then there's a really good presentation on this on Channel 9. Just search for Channel 9 Journey to One.net. And that was a presentation from Build, and it was great. They're talking about their vision for .net. It's not just about MAUI. MAUI comes at the end. I think it's like an hour and 20 minutes in or something like that. I've got some note about it. Yeah, like an hour and 15 minutes into that is the MAUI demo. But the first hour and 15 minutes is talking about how do we get from the mess to .NET Core, and .NET Standard. And it was fascinating. Just their about face on development at Microsoft. It was great. There's a lot of things. If you look at my recording of this, like if you look at the let's see, the Indie Xamarin meetup, I've got a list of all those there. And if you go to my YouTube page, one of the recordings has a list of, it's got the slides, it's got a bunch of the getting started stuff on it. Now keep in mind two things. One, this isn't out yet. I can't stress enough, you're not going to be building a .NET MAUI app today and shipping it tomorrow. And it's so early in the process, it's best to learn about it and monitor it. If you're already a Xamarin shop or a .NET shop that's looking to go mobile or add a mobile presentation to your solution, then you should be aware of MAUI, but I'd start with Xamarin Forms. Or just Xamarin in general. I mean, it's up to you how you want to do it, but just you're not going to be forced to switch to MAUI. Xamarin on day one of MAUI being available isn't going to disappear. And I think effectively the same teams are working on MAUI. So I'm not 100% sure on that because it's so early. You know how things can change at Microsoft. But I think for the most part, the Xamarin team wants to see MAUI exist because it will be better. It will clean up the rough edges of Xamarin, and it'll also make cross-platform development, especially the UI side of things, part of the .NET ecosystem. It's kind of been like an add-on, even though Xamarin really for the most part just works. It's been kind of an add-on because it's mono, right? It's not exactly .NET Core. It's not exactly .NET Standard. It's mono. And all these NuGet libraries written by Microsoft. Yeah, and various others that have contributed to the platform greatly, like James Montemagno, yeah, and who now works at Microsoft, right? So if you're looking again to mobile development, don't be afraid. And you're thinking of Xamarin, don't be afraid of going to Xamarin, because it should be a smooth transition to MAUI. And I feel that you'll be able to take your time, just like you could take your time to go from .NET Framework to .NET Core.
Mhm.
You get clear benefits going to .NET Core, like the built-in DI and IOC. Just that by itself, I think is great, being just built in. It's like, oh yeah, add this, boom, easy to configure. Um, so I think that's probably the safe route.
All right. What has been helpful in your career that you might share with those just getting started or those looking to level up their careers?
Sure. If you're looking at make it as a software engineer, accept that you'll fail, and fail quickly. Yeah, that's something Wozniak says, in his book. But we're in the only career where you're expected to fail. You're paid to fail, because every time you write something, it doesn't exist. Someone said, I have a business need, an analog real world business need. I need you to give me a digital version of it. Or you have some idea of something you want, and you have to go make it work.
Mhm.
If you bring in NuGet packages, you still have to piece it all together and build something that didn't exist before. And that's awesome. That's like playing with Legos every single day and not stepping on them. And I think if you accept that with humility and accept that you should reach out to your peers when you don't understand something, and they'll help you, you'll do really well as a software engineer. And you should know quickly whether you like it or don't like it. Because I think some people don't like failing. And it's very hard for them to overcome that, especially because you're generally punished for failure.
Mm-hmm.
Other things, find your developer community, make friends that are developers, and especially friends that are better than you. And you'll grow each other, because if you find people that are willing to mentor you, you'll find that you'll get better faster than you think, because it'll just be natural that you get better because you feel comfortable failing and getting better at things and then trying the next more difficult level. And you'll find yourself mentoring other people because someone else did that for you. Huge thing, having like senior developers or just other developers as mentors. I can't speak more highly of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Do you have any social media accounts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Sure. So on Twitter, I'm just Auri, Auri. I was able to get my name as the screen name. Do you remember TweetUps? Anybody remember TweetUps?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Twitter?
It sounds like a meetup, though.
Yeah. So when Twitter first started, there were people who were into Twitter, and I was not. I was just, like Facebook was a thing. I'm like, oh, I like Facebook. People are there. Like all my friends are there. Yay, cool. Hey, you want to go to a tweet up with us? I'm like, a what? Is that like an inappropriate party? I don't know what this is. Oh no, Twitter, it's the biggest thing ever. You got to go do a tweet up. All of us get together because we're all Twitter users. I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah. And so I get there and I've got, the Windows mobile phone. This back when I have an HTC One. I try to remember what it was. It wasn't HTC One. It was a Windows mobile phone. And they're like, oh yeah, you got to go and sign up. And I'm like, okay. So like Auri was available. That's the first thing I do. Anytime there's a new account or a new platform out there, I try to get Auri as the username, which I couldn't get on AOL because they require 5 characters.
Jerks.
I would send an email to them and like Auri@AOL.com and it would bounce, doesn't exist. And I'm like, no, I want this so bad. So that's how I got RER@AOL. But anyway, who cares anymore, right? It was AOL. So for the first 3 months that I had Twitter, my password was password.
Nice.
3 months. 3 months. No MFA, nothing. No one hacked the account. I just, I couldn't change the password without A, the site crashing, or B, it telling me like, this is the wrong password or something. And so finally I was like, like 3 months later, I was able to change it. And I was like, oh yeah. And then Twitter became a thing, but I was able to have Auri as my screen name. So that was cool. So yeah, Auri. And then I have a YouTube channel. It's got all the presentations and just other stuff I find interesting. And that's Zipped GS, ZIPPEDGS, George Sam. And that's because I had the first Apple IIgs. I had one of the first Zip GS accelerators for the Apple IIgs, which was very cool. I love that. It's like, oh man, 8 megahertz. Yeah, I'm amazing now. It was quick. You had to like slow things down sometimes because like games would go too fast because they never expected something to run at 8 megahertz.
Yeah, well, that's what the turbo button's for. I don't know. It probably didn't have a turbo button, but I grew up on a 486, so it had a turbo button.
Did you press it on, off, and just
always left the turbo button on? Didn't realize it actually slowed down the computer.
Nice. It's okay.
Well, Ari,
the cool display. You were saying.
Yeah, Ari, really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
That was Auri Rahimzadeh. Ari is an accomplished technophile writer and author, having taught side by side with Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple. Ari continues to share a passion for technology education for children and teens. He is the owner of Ari's Ideas in Fishers, Indiana, and an instructor at 1150 Academy, a non-for-profit technology education boot camp.
If you like this episode, please like, rate, and review on iTunes.
Find show notes, blog posts, and more at sixfiguredev.com.
And catch us live each week on Twitch, and be sure to follow us on Twitter at sixfiguredev.
This has been another episode of the Six Figure Developer Podcast, helping others reach their potential. I am John Calloway.
And I'm Clayton Hunt.